All right, we're gonna run a C13. So normally this is what happens. Normally you run your proton first. So you already shimmed it, you ran your proton. As soon as you have your proton acquired, if your lab manual says you're supposed to run your C13 for that particular experiment, you'll automatically go into C13. So NU space C13, enter. So you're in C13 mode. It automatically defaults to 12 scans. If you have a pure liquid product, and that's all that's in the tube, then 12 scans is enough. However, if you made a solid and you dissolved it in chloroform or DMSO, whatever it called for, only if it's concentrated enough, if you saturated it properly, your lab manual will indicate whether you should run it or not, particularly in organic 3. So we've already proven, provided you've saturated your product in your NMR solvent, you can get a decent spectrum in 200 scans. We chose that number because 200 scans, if you're asked to run it, you do get an acceptable carbon spectrum. So you'll get marks, obviously, if you ran it and you made it concentrate enough and it came out nice. So that's a little bit of a technical thing there. And it takes about 20 minutes. So that's where we set the limit. So if your lab manual says don't run a C13, that's because you'd have to run like 1,000 scans or more, which would take an hour, so we didn't bother. So anyway, we have a pure liquid in there, so we can run with 12 scans. So ZG, and up comes the same window asking you where do you want to save it, and then the file name, I'm going to call this stuff C13. Enter, and away it goes. So it's now off and running, and it's going to do its 12 scans, and voila, your first scan already has most of your carbon peaks right there. It works great. So we'll let this do its thing, and then we'll show you how to process it. And that's the other thing, as always, if you're running 200 scans when you're in organic 3 probably, it takes 20 minutes. So you put a sheet of paper on top of the instrument saying it's running, and then you can go do more work while the 20 minutes is taking place for your C13. But then to take a look at it in this interface, you have to take the auto scale off, because when you do 200 scans, it might look like this. So you come back in and use the arrow down key on the keyboard to make it look more normal. And we're at 7 of 12. Still waiting. And again, like always, you could switch to the Fourier, the FID, looks like that, lovely. Or you could switch it back to part per million mode, which is more familiar. We're at 9. Oh, we're getting there. So yeah, for C13, there really isn't a whole heck of a lot to really do. And all the things you did for the proton, you really don't have to do here. Now, the new software says choose a response. Do you want to automatically do it? You can click yes, and it'll automatically do it. So let's try that. Yes. Boink. It automatically brings up the nuts window. It automatically does the peak picking for you most of the time. But there's a few things that might happen. Notice how it did not pick this peak, and it looks like it's missing this one. So you can go into DP, just like you did before. There's your crosshair. So now you could add on and peak pick the ones that are missing. And let's say it picked something that you didn't like, it was noisy, you can put your crosshairs next to the peak and hit K to kill it if you wanted. So I'll just demonstrate that again. I could kill that one if I wanted. The other thing, I'm gonna hit enter to exit DP mode, and it brings back this menu now. One of the things you can do is sometimes you might get, I'll show you, clipboard text. Sometimes you'll get an automatic clipboard text that shows up. It didn't do it here because it didn't have the data, and then you just go into this view and click it off. So there's a few things you might see in C13. Sometimes you want to get rid of it, so you can do it that way. Now, what if you didn't want to have it automatically done? Okay, well then you would do like you did before. You would say, let's run a macro. You would go get the macro of C13 one-dimensional, you would go and get your stuff. I better go with this one right here. You click on that. If you're doing it, it's going to ask you for a line broadening thing. You choose 0.5, you hit OK. The comment box shows up just like in Proton. You could type in the title right here, you could hit enter, and this is your spectrum. You could peak pick it, it's already done at the moment, but see, this is the example of clipboard text. So what if I don't want this crap? Well, then you just go into view and you get rid of the clipboard text. So there's a couple of ways you can do it when you run a C13. You can run the macro yourself and do the peak picking, etc., etc. The other thing you can also do here is, let's say that this was off and you realized you didn't correct. So we'll go DP. I'm going to press and hold down K, get rid of them all. I'm going to exit DP mode. Now let's say that this peak right here, you know it was supposed to be at, I'll make it up. Let's say it was supposed to be at 10, because it's sitting at 9 right now. You click and hold on top of it with your left mouse button. You hit V on the keyboard for value, and you say, I'm switching the scale because it was supposed to be 10. Enter, and voila. You've reset your scale just like you did in Proton, and then you go back into DP mode, you get your crosshair, you repick with the new scale, blah, 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 and away you go. So folks, same thing, you go into print setup, put it landscape if you want it, you could rearrange it there, but you print it. But you always before you leave, you go into save as, and you make sure that you write stuff C13 finished. So that later, you've already done your peak picking, you processed your C13 the way you want, so the finished version is the one you could reprint later.